Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of BCP Licensing Subcommittee, today, 15th of April. Before I start our meeting, I would like to acknowledge the sad passing of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, on the 9th of April 2021. The Duke has been an extremely important figure in all our lives, and I call on councillors and all parties present to take just a short period of contemplation now. So we will just stay silent for a moment and think of him and his life and what he has given to the country. Thank you. Thank you, members, officers, ladies and gentlemen. We now carry on with our business of the day. So the first business of the day is the election of chairman. I'm the person presiding at this meeting, so we need to identify a chairman for today's meeting, and I would ask, please, for nominations for chair. If Councillor Burton or Councillor Decent would like to.
I'm happy to nominate yourself, Chair, Councillor Burt.
Thank you very much.
And so my Councillor. And so my Councillor. Thank you
very much. So elected, I will continue. So if we could ask, please, our clerk, Jill Hollyoak, to take us through housekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Please note this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited by the Chair. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the Chair will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top of the screen. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank our reserves for attending today, and that's Councillor David Kelsey and Councillor Lawrence Williams. It's always quite onerous because our reserves are required to read all the information and sometimes they're not required. So many thanks to you, Councillor Kelsey and Councillor Williams. You're very welcome to stay to hear today's discussions. Thank you. So I will begin now with declarations of interest, and I will ask each subcommittee member if they have any declarations of interest. Councillor Decent. You're muted, Councillor Decent.
Sorry about that. I have none, Councillor Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Burton?
And that's none for me either, Chair.
Thank you. And I also make the declaration that I have no interest to declare. We now move to the protocol for public speaking. The protocol for the public speaking comes under agenda item 4 and explains everything. Due to COVID, we have to have different arrangements in place, so they are all under agenda item 4. Moving on to the application. This is an application for new premises licence for Southbourne Snooker Bar, 8 Deans Road, Southbourne, Bournemouth. And the application is brought before the Licensing Committee for determination. So I will now introduce all the parties, and I will start with myself. My name is Councillor Jude Butt. I am Ward Councillor for Creekmoor, Hilborn and Waterloo. I'm Chair of the Licensing Committee and I'm Chair of this subcommittee for the purposes of the business before us today. Councillor Burton, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Councillor Richard Burton. I'm Ward Member for Bearwood and Merley. Thank you. And Councillor Decent.
Thank you. My name is Councillor Norman Decent. I am Councillor for Kinston and West Howe.
Thank you. Nananka Randall. Nananka, are you with us? Nananka's not with us. Nananka is our licensing manager. She usually joins us, but she's not with us.
Sorry, I couldn't get to the button on time.
She couldn't get to the button. Nananka, thank you. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Nananka.
Yes, Nananka Randall, I'm the licensing manager and I'll be presenting this item this morning.
Thank you very much. Mr. David Ramsey.
Yes, good morning. My name is David Ramsey. I'm a licensing consultant representing the applicant, Mr. Cockaby.
Thank you. And Mr. Cockerbay, would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute, Mr. Cockerbay. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, my name is Hussein Kochabai. I'm on the snooker place in Southbourne.
Thank you very much. And it's Kochabai. Is that how you
Yes.
pronounce your name? Thank you.
Yeah, Kochabai, yeah.
Yes, you want to pronounce it correctly for you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kochabai. Councillor Andy Jones.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Andy Jones, Ward Councillor for Boscombe East and Pokesdown Ward.
Thank you very much. And Joanne McNamara.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Joanne McNamara, Senior Lawyer, BCP Council and Legal Advisor to the subcommittee today.
And we've already met this lady, but Jill Hollyoak.
Morning, Jill Hollyoak, Clerk to the subcommittee.
Thank you very much, Jill. We do have other Democratic Services officers in the main providing technical support, but they won't be taking part in the hearing. So before I do run through the procedure, may I please check that all persons have given notice of their intention to speak, have been identified, which I believe they have. And if anybody wishes to withdraw representation or wishes not to speak, to say now. So if anybody does wish to do that, if you'd like to raise your hand on the raise your hand icon. I'm not seeing anybody, so I'll take that as read. Thank you. I'll now explain the process for order of speaking. Firstly, the reporting officer, who is Nananka Randall this morning, our licensing manager, will present the report. Then our applicant's representative, Mr. David Ramsey, will make the application. Mr. Kochabai, you are able to speak at that time, but we'll ask the representative to make the application on your behalf. There'll be then questions of the applicant's representative, Mr. David Ramsey, by all parties. This will be members first, followed by our licensing officer, who Nananka Randall. We have no responsible authorities who've made any representations, but we do have an other person who today is our ward councillor, Andy Jones. He will then put forward his submission. He is speaking today on behalf of another person and himself in his own right. There will then be questions of Councillor Jones, and this will be the members of the committee first. The applicant's representative, Mr. Ramsey, also has an opportunity, as does our reporting officer, Nananka Randall. All parties will then be given the opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. I'm taking this as Nananka Randall, Mr. David Ramsey, and then Councillor Andy Jones. We'll then conclude the hearing. The subcommittee will then deliberate in private with the legal advisor and the clerk present. Notification of the decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day of the last day in which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations. The notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I'd now ask that all parties involved will confirm agreement on proposed procedure, or if not, make representations when I ask you to confirm. Nananka, are you happy to confirm?
Yes, I'm happy to confirm.
And Mr. Ramsey?
Yes, I'm happy to confirm, yeah.
Mr. Kochabai? You need to unmute, Mr. Kochabai, just to confirm you're happy.
Yes, I'm happy to confirm.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Jones?
More than happy to confirm, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. So I'd just like to remind all parties not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on the written representations regarding the 4 licensing objectives and relevant objections. All questions pleased to be asked through the chair, and there will be no cross-examinations of parties. So just before we start, could I just see that with regard to document check, that the premises certificate licence was received by everybody as an extra addendum to the meeting, requested by myself. I thought it was important that we had sight of this. If nobody has this, could they indicate using the hand, please, icon? Thank you. So I will now ask the reporting officer, Nananka Randall, if she would present the report, please. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So an application has been received for a new premises licence for Southbourne Snooker Club at 8 Deans Road, Bournemouth. The applicant, Mr. Kakabi, sorry, I'm not very good at the pronunciation, I do apologise, has applied for indoor sporting events Monday to Sunday, 10 AM to midnight, and for the sale of alcohol on the premises Monday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to midnight, and to 2300 on Sundays. The licensing authority has received 8 representations from other persons, which are attached at Appendix 4 of the report. Copies of the application were served on the responsible authorities. A mediation took place with Dorset Police. An agreement was reached to reduce the terminal hour for the sale of alcohol to 23:30 Monday to Saturday and 22:30 on Sundays. And a further condition was also agreed as set out in Appendix 5. That is the application before you for consideration today. Thank you. Councillor, but you're muted.
Muted. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'm muted because my son came home and was rattling around. It's difficult with these remote meetings. Could I please ask if there are any questions on point of fact by the members or the applicant for Nananka Randall? If there are, if you'd indicate. Councillor Decent, Councillor Burton. No, there are not. Okay.
No question.
Okay, I don't have any points of clarification at this moment in time. So now I'll ask Mr. David Ramsey, the applicant's representative, if you'd like to put forward your application. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, members of the committee. You've already met Mr. Kochabai, the applicant. He has been a licensee in the Bournemouth and Southbourne area for many years, and he's happy to answer any questions if required, but I'll be speaking for him. I would first like to turn your attention to the club premises certificate, which the chair mentioned. This certificate was granted in 2005 on grandfather rights, the registered club having a licence prior to that under the old Licensing Act, the 64 Act. You'll see that the hours on that are a terminal hour of 2300 hours Monday to Saturday and 2230 hours on a Sunday. Condition 1.3 of that certificate also allows 20 minutes drinking up time after the permitted hours of taking it to 2320 and 2250. So in theory, this application only adds another 40 minutes to the time of the premises being open. You'll also notice that under club premises certificates, there are very few conditions attached to these certificates. You'll notice that there's no designated premises supervisor required, so you have no single point of accountability should there be any problems with alcohol. You've also got no requirement for personal licence holders. This is something that seems rather strange with certificates, that you don't need a personal licence holder, a qualified person who deals with alcohol. Also, there is no requirement for in-house training of staff, either documented or not documented. So the mind boggles as to what could happen in a registered club, or what was a registered club. Also, there's no requirement for CCTV at the premises, which would give recordings of what happens inside the club and outside the club. So in total, there isn't the same accountability in the way of conditions should the club be the cause of any alcohol-related antisocial behaviour inside the club or outside the club. And there's no conditions to assure accountability that are commonplace in the premises licences that are issued today, including this application. I'd then turn your attention to the benefits of this application, the premises licence, and the benefits that there actually would be for the residents in the area. There would be a designated premises supervisor who would be that single point of accountability should the club, the bar not be run properly. Also, there's a condition on that has been offered that a personal licence holder, someone who actually holds a personal licence, will be on the premises at all times during licensable activities. This is a condition that the applicant has offered. There will also be a condition that requires documented in-house training for all front of house staff. That training then has to be refreshed every 6 months. There's also a comprehensive CCTV system being installed, which is again a condition of the licence, and with really strict guidance by Dorset Police as to how that CCTV has to be implemented and documented. Also, with a premises licence, there is no drinking up time. The terminal hour is for supply of alcohol is that terminal hour. I'd also draw your attention, if you have got the application in front of you, to the comprehensive conditions that my client and I have offered in relation to the 4 licensing objectives. Looking at the public nuisance objective, the main reason for this hearing, you will notice that Dorset Police and Environmental Health, BCP Environmental Health, have examined these offered conditions by the applicant and are satisfied that they are more than adequate to allow the premises to operate to the hours requested. As a result of this, they are not here today making representation. I don't know how many of you actually know the area of Deans Road, Parkwood Road, but in Parkwood Road, just nearby, is another licensed premises which has been operating for some time. That premises has the terminal hours Sunday to Thursday of midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning on Fridays and Saturdays. It has a large outside seating area which would actually cater for approximately 40 persons. It also allows the sale of alcohol on the premises and off the premises. The outside seating area is only approximately 30 metres from the junction with Deans Road. Members of the committee, it is to be noted that to my knowledge, none of these residents have actually made any representation commenting negatively on that premises, which is just as close really as the snooker bar. Over the last month, myself and on behalf of my client has tried to mediate with the residents. This mediation actually continued until yesterday, when I was asked several questions yesterday and tried to allay the fears and the concerns of the resident. As part of this mediation, my client has offered 4 additional conditions to be considered. These were that he would ensure that the floor space of the main area is actually...
Sorry, Mr. Ramsey, can I just stop you there? Yes, sure. Are these conditions in addition to what we have in front of us? So this is being put before us today, or is this documented somewhere that we haven't seen?
They were actually sent to the licensing office.
Fine. These are the conditions we already have. Thank you very much. It sounded to me as if you were introducing something new. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. If you'd like to continue. Yes,
these were offered as part of mediation about 3 weeks ago.
Thank you.
These are that about 75% of the floor space would continue to be taken up by the 3 snooker tables. This in itself radically limits the number of people that can actually be in the premises. The premises would continue to operate a double door policy to ensure no noise emanates from the entrance. The applicant is also prepared to offer his mobile phone number to residents in Deans Road to give them direct contact with himself should there be any concerns re the running of the premises. And yesterday, in mediation with through the licensing office with another member of another resident, we agreed to actually give that also to people in Parkwood Road in the vicinity of the premises. And the applicant is also prepared to limit the number of people outside the premises for smoking purposes to 4 persons at a time. That area will be constantly monitored by staff and the CCTV to ensure compliance with the public nuisance objective. In conclusion, this bar will only be inviting to those who actually partake in the game of snooker. This in itself is not a game that in any way generates a noise issue, provided that the premises is managed properly, which my client is intent to do. There's been no evidence to my knowledge or the knowledge of my client that this premises, which has been run for many years, I would say more than 20 years, has caused any antisocial problems in Deans Road area. I would imagine that if that had been the case, the police or the environmental health would have brought this to our attention. Both the police and the environmental health considered the application at length and agreed that the comprehensive conditions offered met all of the 4 licensing objectives. None of these conditions I would bring to your attention that have been offered are currently on that club premises certificate, which is still in operation. My client has also taken into consideration the concerns of the residents, and he's offered these extra conditions that I mentioned to try and allay their concerns, and he's happy for them to become conditions if the licence is granted. So I would ask you in his behalf to look on this application favourably. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. Mr. Cotcherbay, did you have anything you'd like to add to your representative's words? If you'd like to unmute, if you did want to add something, or just to confirm that you didn't, that's fine. Mr. Cotcherbay, would you like to unmute?
No, I'm happy with Dave Ramsey, what he's saying.
Thank you very much. That's kind of you. Okay. Members, do we have any questions I'm sure we do, for Mr. Ramsey? Councillor Decent, if you'd like to go first.
Thank you very much indeed. You mentioned about CCTV. Do you have a camera on the entrance to the actual snooker bar? And that's
Yes,
Ramsey.
Yes, there is.
Mr. Ramsey, if you could, once you've heard the question, if you can come through me, please, because you need to come through the chair. OK, so thank you for your question, Councillor Decent. Mr. Ramsey, would you like to answer the question, please? Thank you.
Yes, my apologies. Yes, the CCTV system, the Dorset Police, and if you look onto the licensing objectives in the application, Dorset Police have their very high standard of what is required in the way of CCTV, and each premises has to have a camera which covers the outside of the premises, okay. And it also covers as you walk in the door. The CCTV photograph takes a recording of the top half of every person coming in, and so that they can be identified if necessary at a later stage.
That's fine. That's what I wanted to know. I do have an additional question,
of
Chair.
course, Councillor Decent, please ask it.
You mentioned about alcohol being sold in the actual bar itself. Could you give me some indication of the strength of the alcohol?
Mr. Cotcherbay may be able to answer that for you.
Thank you, Mr. Cotcherbay. The question is, what strength alcohol do you serve in your club?
It's spirit and beer.
And I think what is the percentage of the beer? There are some very high alcohol level beers. I think that's Councillor Decent's concern. What is the level of alcohol in your beers?
It's 5%.
Okay.
Right. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Decent. Councillor Burton.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. There's just one question, because we've heard quite a lot of the advantages of to the residents of granting this licence, and I was just wondering what the advantages to the club are of the licence rather than using the registered club licence.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Mr. Ramsey, if you'd like to answer that, thank you.
Yes, what the club was failing because people nowadays they don't always want to be the member of a club and pay membership to a club, and this, by having the premises licence, it opens it up to people who maybe just want to go for one night out maybe a month or even less, they may want to go and have a game of snooker. And that is the benefits, is that it attracts people who just really want to have an occasional game rather than having to register and pay for a club membership. So it opens it up to them.
Thank you very much. So it's opening up accessibility to the public.
Yes, it was quite obvious that the having a club where people have to be members was failing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burton, did you have a secondary question or anything else you'd like to ask at this moment?
Not at the moment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ramsey, I have a few questions. Obviously, we've heard from 8 objectors, and we have our other person to speak in a minute, Councillor Andy Jones. And they sit around mainly these heads in case noise concerns, after-hour drinking, parking, smoking outside the premises, the clearing premises with regard to drinking up time, the poker games, which you haven't touched upon, the requirement or the ability to pub hop once the brew house pub closes, which we checked the time, it's 10 o'clock, although you've outlined another snooker hall which has similar opening times, other similar venues, and already problems in the neighbourhood, which you believed there weren't, but I think the objectors made it quite clear they felt there were problems already in the neighbourhood. So that's quite a long list. So taking that list into consideration, a lot of those are mitigated by the conditions which have been put forward by your client, and also by the requirements under negotiation of the police with regards to snooker, televisation of some sporting activity, a football game, etc. If it were to be that, then there was to be a heightened risk, and there was to be a further interaction so that the public would be kept safe from harm with regard to that. That was the police applicant put the following condition forward, and I just wondered whether you'd like to take us through that condition and why that was necessary. I think that's important that we understand that, because you did say that the police didn't have any reservations, and indeed they did, and asked for that condition to be put forward. The noise concerns, they obviously sit with an application such as this. I'd like to hear about parking. That was a concern of our objectors, and we must broach these, and what the parking situation is there, as there are going to be more members of the public attracted. Smoking outside the premises, we do have a condition now for that kept to be no more than 4 persons, and to be carefully policed and enforced. Policed, I mean, by the premises licence owner, not the police themselves. The drinking up time, it doesn't exist because it terminates at the time of closure of drinking hours. I want to hear more about the poker games, please, Mr. Ramsey, and your thoughts with regards to, you believe there hasn't been any issues, but the objectors would see that differently. That is a rather long list. I hope you've made some notes, but, and I've made notes, so if you lose yourself, we can come back to them. Yeah. But I think it's important for the purposes of all the objections we received. We did receive 8, and they were fairly similar in their application, so that we have a good understanding of the mitigations you're going to put in place and how the objections are going to be countered. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, I'm sure you have to prompt me. Yeah, starting with the poker game. It is it's a room which is very small, which is for occasional poker games, and has been used as that for some time. Under the Gaming Commission, they have laid down conditions. Basically, it's a policy document giving advice on that. They limit, because it's a pub, they limit it to what's called low level. There's lots of things in that, but the main things are that the maximum stake for any player is £5 per game, and the combined stakes for your premises must not exceed £100 per day. So it's very low level. It's not as if they can tie up with other premises and have a huge payout like bingo halls do. It's very much low level. in that. So I hope that sort of answers that question. In relation to the noise issues, having been a police officer and the licensing officer for Pool Division before I retired from the police, I would have expected, if there had been a noise issue from the club over the years, I would have expected that to have been brought to my attention, or I would have expected to have heard about that. And also I would have expected the environmental health officers to have heard about that. So in saying that, I would have expected some sort of representation from either environmental health or the police here today. And I take your point that there was representation at the beginning from the police. So I misunderstood. I meant that they weren't here today making representation. So I would have expected that to come. But I do take the point of the residents regarding the noise issues. And it's something that I have tried for the last month to allay their fears on that issue, and also to put in place some extra offered conditions to help that. The benefits of the camera, the CCTV outside the premises, and as you are aware, Chair, this has to be recorded and kept for 28 days. So if there was an issue out there, then the applicant can't turn around and say, no, it didn't happen. It's there to be inspected. So all that is in place, which isn't there under a club premises certificate. Also, the benefits of having direct contact with the applicant, which has also been offered. Should there be an issue one night where there is noise emanating from the premises, then they will be able to contact Mr. Kochabai direct, and he will have to deal with that, or else he will have to face the consequences of possibly a review hearing, which is again is there. And that was one of the questions from an applicant, from a person making representation yesterday, was what can we do should this premises get the licence and then there be problems? Well, there is. I made him clear of the process of the review, which is open to any interested party.
Thank you. So just to clarify that point, then, it's that you would have expected that reported to have heard about reported interventions such as environmental police, and there have been none of those.
That's correct. You know, obviously this premises has been operating for many years, and I would have expected if there had been a noise issue, I would have expected that to have been at least commented on by the police or the environmental.
That's fine and understood. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
The parking is an issue, whether it's open to 5 o'clock or open to midnight. There is a parking issue there, but there is Parkwood Road where you know, which is a long road where people can go. And to be honest, it's not a premises that is going to have a lot of customers. As I said, the snooker tables take up 75% of the floor space, and you can only have 4 people playing snooker at one time on one table. So that's 12 people for 75% of the floor space. The other existing floor space, you would only really get about 30 people maximum in that floor space. So you're only looking at about 45 people that can get within that building at any one time. So I would hope that parking would be kept to a minimum, and the problem would be minimal. And you have to prompt me in any other questions.
Okay. We wanted to hear clarification with regard to, for the purposes of the meeting as it's recorded, clarification with regard to how smoking outside the premises was going to be mitigated, because that was a concern with regard to public nuisance, etc., etc.
I'm sorry, you've frozen. Oh, I've got you back. I'm sorry, you froze there. I'm asking.
Sorry, I disappeared for a second, not of my own making. Technology intervened there. where had we got to? We'd got to asking you to the smoking, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, smoking. Carry on, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, unfortunately, unfortunately or fortunately, fortunately in my mind, smoking isn't allowed in the premises, so people will leave the premises to smoke. What we've offered is for a maximum of 4 people at any one time, who will be able to leave to smoke outside the premises. They will then be monitored, as should happen in any premises, any licensed or non-licensed premises. They will be monitored. The problem with not allowing anyone out to smoke is that people will leave, and it's better to have 4 people outside the premises being monitored than people leaving the premises and going maybe further down the road and smoking and causing noise. So they will be monitored at all times. And as I said earlier, if there is any problem of noise outside that premises, it will all be on that CCTV camera to be examined later on.
Thank you. And we go on now to drink up time and noise attenuation with regard to bleed using the double door system. Yes,
the double door system I believe has been in operation under the previous management. As you in the premises, you have got 2 sets of doors. You then have stairs that go upstairs because the premises is in the 1st floor. You then have another door there, which leads into the main hall. So you have, in effect, you have got three doors before you get into where the bar is.
And members, just to say, we do have a plan of the premise if you want to have a sight of this, as Mr. Ramsey explains, access and egress. It's page 33. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Continue.
Yes, so these doors, it's been offered as a condition that the double door system will continue to be used there to stop any noise emanating from the building.
And you are, in fact, you've got the foyer on the bottom floor and the actual premises on the next floor? That's correct, yeah. Okay, so the bleed would only be at the foyer level, and unless people were hiding in the stairway, you wouldn't expect there to be a noise bleed of voices, etc.
No, as I said, there will be 3 sets of doors, in effect, from the main bar.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. And now we'd like you to, you took us through the comparison with the club certificate to this application with regard to drinking up time. So if you'd like to reiterate on that, please, for the purposes of our objectives.
Yes, fortunately I was, or unfortunately, I was involved with the transition period when I was the police licensing officer and sat on the Dorset group for that. And it was something that either was left out intentionally or not, that there was no longer a drinking up time. Under the club premises certificate and as bars, they were allowed 20 minutes drinking up time. This would, in the club premises certificate, adds 20 minutes onto the time when people have to leave the premises. And as we all know, those who are old enough to remember the 64 Act, this was often a problem because people did not leave in time. I'm sure some of us were included, did not leave in time. Well, under the Licensing Act, there was no longer drinking up time. So in effect, if you look at both the certificate and the premises license application, it's not an hour added on, it's at the most 40 minutes added on.
Okay, that's useful, thank you. Just one more thing, the application is for Sunday, is for 10, where as we are comparing with the club certificate, it was 12. Is there a reason behind the extra 2 hours asked for?
It was, if most premises now, it seemed to be a thing, maybe sadly, that when most premises, if you look at under the 64 Act, most premises had reduced hours on a Sunday. Nowadays, with club, and I do many applications, and I see many applications, the there doesn't seem to be that difference now between Sundays and weekdays when it comes to hours. So basically, it was to basically make it uniform throughout the week. There was no real reason as such for having the same hours on a Sunday. It was to make it uniform throughout the week.
Okay, that's useful. And my last question is actually based on, again, a comparison with regard to the club certificate. You've asked for some non-standard timings on page 21. And the club certificate talks of, at the new year, times are from the start of the permitted hours on the 31st of December, which would be 10 a.m. Until January the 1st. But this application is January the 2nd. Is that a typo or is that your request?
I'm just having a look at it here. That's a typo. That's my mistake. It should be the same.
Clara, can we please amend that, Jill?
It should be the end of permitted hours on the 1st of January. My apologies.
I wondered why it was a 48-hour stretch. So that's fine. So that's clarified that. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to bring our licensing officer in, if I may, Nananka, to ask you with regards to the reported interventions. Have we had any reported interventions from environment or police with regard to these premises license, with regard to this premises over time? Thank you.
Sorry, dogs in the background. The environmental health obviously reviewed the application and felt that they didn't want to or feel necessary to make a rep. I'm not aware of any history of issues at the premises from them, and Dorset Police haven't reported any either.
So we have no history. That's very useful for that clarification. Thank you very much, Nananka. We will now go back to, I'll find my place. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. Nananka, do you have any questions for Mr. Ramsey?
No, I don't, thank you.
Okay, so now we will ask our other persons. Councillor Jones, if you'd like to put forward your submission, please. Councillor Jones, on behalf of yourself and I believe one other party. Thank you.
Chairman, it's Democratic Services. I do apologise for interrupting.
Yes.
Could we just for completion just check whether Councillor Andy Jones has any questions of the applicant?
Yes, of course. Councillor Jones, any questions?
I don't have any particular questions of the applicant. I'd actually written a brief statement I was going to read out listing some of the concerns that the resident and indeed myself have regarding this, but most, actually I think all of the ones that you listed earlier on have been discussed. I would just say my main three areas of concern, and indeed the resident I'm representing, is noise nuisance, the games of poker which will take place, and also the gathering outside the venue. And I respect obviously that Mr. Ramsey's gone to great lengths to try and mitigate those concerns. Personally, I don't think they go far enough, and certainly that's the view of the resident I'm representing. I guess it's the one of the concerns I have, one of the main concerns I have, the gathering outside the venue. I think Mr. Ramsey talked about that particular area of gathering being monitored. How closely monitored is that going to be? Is it going to be a case of I'll stick my head out the door once or twice an evening? What does that actually mean in reality in terms of close monitoring? I'd quite like an answer to that, if possible. But as I say, I'm not going to go through all the other issues because obviously they've been mentioned before. But really nothing from what I've heard this morning has really allayed any of my fears, and I know the resident I'm representing feels as strongly as that. So I think I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Mr. Ramsey, if you'd like to answer Councillor Jones' question, please.
Yes, I will do. Unfortunately, again, in the Licensing Act, when it talks about premises and their responsibilities, it talks about the vicinity of the area, but nobody seems to quite know what the vicinity is, and different people have got different opinions on what the vicinity of the premises is. having been down in Deans Road, my opinion is that the vicinity of the area would be that stretch of Deans Road, and it would be the responsibility of the applicant, especially at closing time, to make sure that no one loiters in that area, and that putting on a police hat is their responsibility to do that. As far as the smokers are concerned, there will be a monitor behind the bar which will show the outside of the area. It's a multiplex system, so it will show the outside of the area. So it will be monitored by the person behind the bar. He will be able to see what is happening out there. There will also be other members of staff there who will regularly go down and check if there are smokers outside. So it will be monitored. It won't just be every half hour. It will be monitored both by CCTV and a member of staff. When they're doing the bar collection, when they're out there, they will go down if there are people outside smoking.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones, has that answered your question, or do you have anything further you'd like to add?
Yeah, just to come back on that. I mean, Mr. Randy talks about the camera being monitored in the bar area. I mean, I can just imagine on a busy night. I don't know how many staff that the property employs. Realistically, how often is that camera going to be looked at in terms of what's going on outside?
Okay, question there for you, Mr. Randy. You must bear in mind, Councillor Jones, that we hopefully are going to have 4 people outside smoking, and others will have dispersed, and a maximum of 45 people on the premise, if that gives you an idea as to number. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey, if you'd like to answer the question. Yes,
I will do. Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, one of the conditions on the licence is for staff training, in-house staff training, and that it's quite possible that I will be doing that training anyway. As Mr. Hutchby is a customer of mine. That staff training also covers the public nuisance aspect of the Licensing Act, so that will be covered, and that will be something that will be stressed, is that they have to monitor the outside area, both in person and on the CCTV. It's impossible to say how many times a member of staff is going to look at a camera, because everybody's are individuals. But Mr. Kochby can only stress through the training what a member of staff should be doing, and they will be told to monitor that camera regularly. And as you said, it's not as if there's going to be 200 people in that premises. It's very limited to the number of people who can be in that premises at one time, but there should be time for that member of staff to monitor the camera.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. I do see, I just have a question for you. Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll bring you back in a minute. I do see Councillor Jones' point, because you're talking of not very many people, only perhaps a 45, but it's at moments where it's at its busiest, where it may be that there is a core requirement to be looking at the camera, and yet the operatives are going to be busy. So I think it's just given that assurance that the viewing of the camera will be proportionate. We'd like your assurance that the reviewing of the camera will be proportionate to any given situation that's arising within the premises.
Yes, I agree with you, and it's something I look on as a premises license, as a live license. It's something that should be reviewed. The policies within the premises should be reviewed regularly, and that is something that has to be looked at. And if it turns out that they find that they are not being able to monitor the outside of the area as much as they should, then the designated premises supervisor or the premises license holder has to look at that and sort that problem out. And it may be that he may have to bring an extra member of staff on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Jones, do you have anything further you'd like to raise? I know it's very difficult because there's an awful lot going on and things ping into your mind. So if there's anything extra you wanted to raise at this time.
Not particularly, but perhaps a very quick question for you, Chair, if I may, because I'm not completely au fait, obviously, with the licensing regime and how it works. If this license is granted, what review periods are there in terms of monitoring what goes on for the first X amount of weeks or months? I don't know if you can explain that, please, Chair.
Yes, thank you for your question. There's no set time periods. A review can be held and evoked at any time. And it's with regard to if there's anything which is going on in the premises which is potentially breaching the 4 licensing objectives, then any objector in the vicinity or any of our responsible authorities can bring in the requirement for a review. That can happen at any moment. It could happen tomorrow. If we were so disposed to grant and something went terribly wrong, it could be brought in that quickly, okay? Can be invoked that quickly. So it is an ongoing test. It's an ongoing coverage or safety net for the public that a license, should we be disposed to grant, isn't just granted and then we forget about it. It is constantly reviewed, and there is the ability of the public, which is very important because they can be relevant objectors. They have been today. Yourself, of course, your ward colleague, and the responsible authorities. Anyone within the vicinity can bring in. It has to be obviously a relevant reason for review, but that can happen at any time. I hope that helps.
Of course, appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now, members, any questions of Councillor Jones? Members first. Councillor Deason, did you have a question? You're on mute.
Yep, I'm now muted. If I may, I've actually come across my notes and it mentions about risk assessment, which is requested by the police. Has that taken place?
This is a question for the other party. Should I put that question for you to the licensing officer?
It was actually to Mr. Ramsey.
Okay, I'm not sure Mr. Ramsey will be able to answer that, but I'll certainly put it to him. Mr. Ramsey?
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question. What risk assessments is?
It's literally just notes that I picked up. Just simply about risk assessment will be conducted at the request of the police.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you for that reference, Councillor Decent. You're talking with regard to the condition which has been placed by the police.
That is correct.
That's correct. Yes, the televisation of various other sporting activities.
Correct.
Which may cause more emotion, such as football games, etc.
100% correct. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Could you? It's not quite in turn with the question, but it's been put. So I'll just ask that we deal with it, and then we'll come back to Councillor Jones. Could you just give us coverage on that again, just to reassure us with regard to that condition? Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, I believe this was, it's, if there is, as you said, maybe during the Euros, the football Euros coming up, and Mr. Clutcherby, because Scotland are playing, so
hopefully they'll win.
We won't be playing for long. But I believe that what it is that if there is a major sporting event and the premises is going to show that live on the TVs, then a risk assessment will be done in relation to whether it is felt that the premises needs to employ SIA registered door supervisors for that event. And that will be done in conjunction with the police and with the advice of the police. And if there is a request from the police that they feel that there is a need for door supervision, either 1 or 2 SIA registered door supervisors, then that will be put in place. So it will be a risk assessment for events such as that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. I'm sure
Thank
that helps. Councillor Decent certainly helps us again to refresh our memories on that. So, Councillor Decent, did you have any questions for our other person, Councillor Andy Jones, with regard to some of his concerns that he might have?
No, I have no other questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burton, do you have any questions for Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. I have no questions for Councillor Jones.
Mr. Ramsey, do you have any questions for Councillor Jones?
No, none at all.
Okay. And finally, Nananka Randall, do you have any questions for Councillor Jones?
No, I don't have a question, but just going back to what Councillor Jones was asking with regard to the review of the licence and what happens, once a licence is granted. I just thought I'd maybe just expand on the answer that you gave, Councillor Butt, because obviously once a licence is granted, if there are problems with noise, which is obviously one of the main things that seems to have been mentioned by the representations that have been provided, the environmental health team do investigate any complaints of noise, and they do take these matters seriously. They do have people working at night, and we also have multi-agency meetings on a weekly basis with all of the responsible authorities, which includes Dorset Police, trading standards and environmental health, and the licensing team, where we discuss any issues. So there is a robust system in place of checks and balances, and if there were issues that started to arise with any premises, we do try to action, in a quick process, so that the problem doesn't escalate to actually needing a formal review. We wouldn't try to engage with the premises at an early stage and mitigate any problems, and that we would engage with Mr. Kokogby to address any problems that may emerge once a license is issued. So I just thought that might also put your mind at ease slightly.
Thank you very much, Nananka. Yes, obviously we at BCP as a licensing authority would do everything with regard to interventions prior to any review being necessary, but that review is open to any objector. So thank you very much for that clarity. That's extremely helpful, Nananka. So if there are no further questions from anybody or any further information, so we now have the period where all parties will be given the opportunity to sum up. So as I will start with the person who spoke last to go next, and that is you, Nananka. Do you have anything you would like to say with regard to your summation?
All I would like to say is that just to confirm that all of the conditions that Mr. Ramsey has been mentioning that have been put forward, as well as the conditions as presented by Dorset Police, would be included in any license that is issued. That's correct, isn't it, Mr. Ramsey?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's extremely helpful. And Mr. Ramsey, you now have your opportunity to summarise. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, this bar, as I said previously, it will only be inviting to those who want to partake in a game of snooker, which shouldn't generate any noise issues, provided the premises is managed properly and the proper conditions are put in place, which we believe they have. Both Dorset Police and the Environmental Health have had the opportunity to discuss things, and they are now satisfied with what the premises is offering, the applicant is offering. And my client has also tried to take into consideration through mediation the concerns of the residents who have fears of noise issues. My feeling and the feeling of the applicant is that the conditions attached to a premises licence far outweigh the conditions that are attached to the current club certificate, and we'd ask you to look favourably on the application.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. And Councillor Jones, your opportunity for summary and to tell us any last-minute matters that may be concerning you. You have as long as you need to speak. Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think my main concerns really, and I finished with this in my previous comments, are around the monitoring of the external area, whether that be by CCTV or by staff members. Obviously, we've heard from Mr. Ramsey in terms of the mitigating circumstances, but I'm still not convinced that there won't be problems outside of the venue, and that will have a direct impact on the neighbours in the street. So on that basis, I would ask that the application is refused.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. So now we will conclude this hearing, and we will be deliberating in private with the legal advisor and the clerk present. And notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, which is our COVID regulations, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held, which is today, April 15th, in accordance with those regulations. Notification of the decision will include the information about right of appeal as appropriate, and I will ask Joanne McNamara if she would kindly give us that information. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm, there is a right of appeal against any decision made. Appeal period starts 21 days from notification, and the appeal is made to the Magistrates' Court.
Thank you very much. So that ends the hearing with regard to this application. So I would ask please that Mr Ramsey and Mr Cotcherbay and Councillor Jones now leave us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Hello.
Mr Cotcherbay, if you would now leave the meeting, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, I would ask, please, I need a 5-minute comfort break, if that would be in order. So could we please come back at 11:10? Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the subcommittee of the Full Licence Committee, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, held on April the 15th. We have an agenda item in front of us this morning, but before I continue, I need to read the exclusion of press and public. In relation to the items of business appearing below, the committee is asked to consider the following resolution: that under section 100A subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 in part 2 of schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in withholding the information outweighs such interest in disclosing the information. So, Max,